Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing details. Today, we are discussing the Omega Seamaster Diver 300 meter. Now, this is a mid-size version of the watch. It's part of the generation of Diver 300 meter that arrived in 2012. It's 36.25 millimeters in diameter, 12.7 millimeters thick. From lug tip to lug tip, the case measures 43.1 millimeters, and if we add the end links to the bracelet, then it is 47.8 millimeters across the wrist, with an 18 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We'll throw this watch on my wrist. My wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference. You can see the watch well. It is comfortable. It is just the right size for a wrist between about 13.5 and 16 centimeters circumference. So this is a mid-size, not a ladies model. I could easily wear this at my wrist size, but you could also wear it on a smaller wrist. And on a strap, it's going to fit even smaller wrists. On a strap, this could fit a 13 centimeter circumference wrist. You see, the lugs and even the end links are nowhere near the edge of my wrist, and it is low enough to fit underneath the cuff. Taking a quick look, the case is steel, the bracelet's steel, they match perfectly, and the bracelet has a lot of presence. It seems larger relative to the watch than the same bracelet on the 41 millimeter version, so it still has a very robust appearance on the wrist thanks to the physical presence of the bracelet. We have these polished intermediates and rolled outer link shoulders that give it a little bit of the appearance of a hybrid dress sports bracelet, and that truly is what it is. But we've moved ahead from where we were back in the 90s and early 2000s with these divers, as the removable links in the bracelet now feature screws rather than pin sleeves for easy sizing with jeweler screwdrivers. We also have intermediate size links for more precise sizing, and if you need more length, perhaps to use over a diving suit or even a thick winter coat or sweater if you're wearing out in a cold climate, we have this all-or-nothing flip-out dive extension that remains crisp to this day. We have a thick gauge steel clasp and single swing arm, a twin trigger release so it stays closed until you engage both. There's a combination of polish and satination on the clasp. You can see the engraving remains deep and well-defined, so this watch has been sparsely and professionally, if ever, refinished. We have a conforming end link to close the gap and better integrate with the case, and we have the famed lyre-style lugs that Omega fans have known on Speedmasters and Seamasters since the early 60s. Inward and outward bevels at the lugs, that's what that means. Satin mid-case, we have a screw-down crown. The watch is 300 meters water resistant. We also have a helium escape valve for saturation divers. So you open this up, and then as you surface, helium that accumulates in the watch during the dive can exit without blowing out the seals in the crystal. So when internal pressure exceeds external by 2 to 3 bar, this comes into play, but you've got to open it before you dive. Now, the bezel is a 120 click. Let's hear it. It's very precise. It has a satisfying, loud, and well-defined detent, and you can line up the bezel pearl with the minute hand for an impromptu 0 to 60-minute count-up timer. Now, this particular model within the Omega catalog, the Diver 300 meter, has always had a relatively shallow knurling. So the one thing I'd take note of here is if you're going to use it as a dive timer, set the bezel prior to jumping in the water and getting wet, because the knurling is a little bit shallow and can be difficult to grip with wet hands. The bezel insert on this generation of Diver 300 meter is ceramic for scratch tolerance. And as you can see, the watch has plenty of luminescence, with the minute hand and the bezel pearl being green, so you can easily distinguish them from the rest of the dial and judge elapsed time at a glance. Note that all 3 hands are lumed. I think every dive watch should have a lumed running seconds hand. Not everyone does. That's a credit to Omega here. This generation of the Diver 300 meter from 2012 to 2017 had a lacquered dial rather than the Omega waves. We also had upscale applique Omega logo, marquee, and individual indices, giving it an expensive look compared to its predecessors back in the Pierce Brosnan era. And indeed, this is the Pierce Brosnan era James Bond Seamaster. His was a little bit larger, but it is that family of Omega watch often described as the James Bond. From the case to the dial to the skeleton hands, all of these elements are quite famous and well regarded. We have a date disc with silver on black, the color of the dial. I always love to see that on a watch. There is a quick set system. There's also hacking seconds. Inside the case, we have Omega caliber 2500. which is a coaxial conversion of Omega caliber 1120, which is an Omega upgrade of the ETA 2892A2. So caliber 2500 here is a bidirectional automatic winder with a 48-hour power reserve. It has stop seconds, it has the quick set date, pivots on 27 joules, it's adjusted in 5 positions. It is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer. It's also a coaxial escapement as envisioned by George Daniels, which means that it has a direct and indirect impulse tangential contact escapement that improves power reserve and improves chronometry. It also reduces maintenance needs. So this watch has a 48-hour power reserve, where a standard ETA 2892A2 has a 42-hour power reserve. The 2500 also has a free sprung architecture to the balance, so it can be adjusted very precisely, but then it also has superior shock tolerance. It beats away at the quirky rate of 3.5 hertz. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.